call this meeting of the Grafton Select Board to order. We do have one remote Select Board member this evening, so the Select Board will just call a roll call real quick. Matt?
Often is here.
Roy here.
Jefferson here.
Foley here.
And we have Ray on Zoom. Can you hear us, Ray?
Does not appear so.
Okay, so we'll work on that
I'll work
technical
on that right now.
difficulty, and while we're looking into that, we also have members of the school committee present and the finance committee here to discuss the Chapter 70 funding with our Senator Mike Moore. If you would like to come up and say hello. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
It's my pleasure, and sorry I couldn't make the previous meeting.
Yep.
So, I don't know how you do this. I know Representative Meridian already went through the governor's numbers in the budget. Actually, the House is actually releasing their budget, I think, tomorrow or Thursday. So, whatever numbers we go over could change. Do you want me to go over the same numbers? I don't know how you want to do this.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, we know the numbers. We know the
Okay,
numbers
all right,
cold,
okay.
and we have a bunch of statistics to share with you. I think the issue, I'm the chair of the finance committee. Oh,
We
sorry.
have a fifth member.
Oh, we have
here
fifth
now.
member. Oh, Nick's here. So I'll call the finance committee to order. We have two members remote, Nick and, is that Skip?
Yep.
And then present Sue.
Yep.
Greg and Mark. So thank you for being here tonight and joining us. This has been an issue that's been near and dear to our hearts. We're very concerned with the state aid and the Chapter 70 aid that's been coming to us. In my role as town manager in the town of Groton, I sent you a letter. I'm sure you read it and you have it memorized. You know all the statistics that I put in there. I sent it to all the members of the Senate Ways and Means
Okay.
Committee. So, you know, basically what we're concerned about is the formula just doesn't work for communities like Groton and Grafton, I should say. I'm sorry, I forget where I am. I'm in Grafton tonight, right? It just doesn't work. You know, getting an increase in aid of about what, Jay, we get 1%?
0.7.
0.7% when our budget is going up over 4% and our costs are increasing over and over again. The state needs to be a better partner to us. And while we understand that the Student Opportunity Act is there to help educate the students in the Commonwealth, and it's really geared towards the urban areas, the suburban areas also need support. And what I'm hoping happens is that the House and the Senate take the governor's numbers, throw them out like you do every year, and then start giving us the aid that we really need to make our budgets, to meet our budgetary needs. Greg has some statistics that I think we want to share with you that I think are very important and I think really illustrates the point, if that's okay.
Yep, and they're bringing it up. So basically, I took the publicly available state aid numbers back through FY 2010
Okay, thank you.
and the Grafton budget numbers through ClearGov and past town reports, and we had a discussion with Representative Meridian. We talked about enrollment changes. So I have these both as the blue and the red are the raw numbers, and the green and the yellow are per student numbers. So you can see since FY 2010, the state aid per student has increased from $2,800 to $4,300, while at the same time our costs for educating them have gone from $8,000 to $14,721. So we've increased by $65,000 to $6,600, while at the same time gotten an increase in state aid of 15%,
Okay.
$1,500. So the state aid as percent of the school department budget has gone from 37% down to 29% over that time.
Okay.
So those numbers it just doesn't work. You know, when we see other communities out there getting substantial amounts of money, major increases in their budget, and, you know, Grafton continues to fall behind, dropping from 37% to 29% over that period of time, makes it more difficult for the taxpayers in Grafton to support their school system. We've been very fortunate that we've had two operational overrides over since 2014. We had one in 2014, one in 2020, and we're probably going to need another one in 2025 or 2026 at the way things are going. That's putting a real burden on the taxpayers of Grafton, and quite frankly, we don't get back what we give to the state in tax dollars. And it's getting more and more difficult to make ends meet in this town, and we're starting to squeeze out the middle class and the lower class. So the state really needs, I think, in my opinion, I think the state needs to step up and really be a partner with the suburban communities as well as the urban communities. Obviously want them to get money, but the biggest statistic that scares me in the governor's proposal, of the money, the new money that's set aside, 47 million is being split among 212 school districts. That just doesn't make sense to me. When you have all this money and it leaves $47 million for 212 districts, Grafton gets 0.7%. The community that I work for gets 0.36% increase in state aid. And the minimum the minimum contribution and spending needs to go up. I think in this town, I think it's $800,000, and you're giving us $100,000 towards that. So I just like to see a better partnership from the Commonwealth to communities such as Grafton. And I think that's the message we wanted to relay to you this evening.
Okay.
I'll stop talking now because I'm sure there are many other people that, although I'll probably talk again, just want to warn you about that.
So there, we've noticed a couple areas in the numbers 2014, I believe, when we instituted full day kindergarten. So that increased our numbers. So our numbers went up, but the cost per student did not go up very much. And then in the override, we had similar things. And also the other slide that I prepared was over time, and since 2010,
Thank you.
our enrollment statewide has gone from 0.296% to 0.326% of state enrollment, while our state aid has gone down from 0.207% to 0.193. So we're bringing in a higher percentage of the students in the state, but getting less of the state aid as a percentage.
If I can just point something out really quickly. When we did the full day kindergarten, Jay, forgive me if I'm mistaken, but we got a grant retroactively for that. Is that correct? From the state?
Yep.
So the communities that did full day kindergarten around that time frame got a grant to cover 1 year retroactively, and then moving forward, we carried the burden of paying those teachers and for all their materials and everything. Now the governor has announced that she has this initiative that she's going to take that sports betting money and give it to communities to help them build pre-K and K programs, which puts us at a disadvantage because we have those programs, we're paying for them ourselves, and we're not seeing any sort of special treatment from the state, which I feel that we should, because we've got a robust pre-K and a robust K that we started at the behest of the state, but the state hasn't been helping us fund it all along. That's my personal opinion. So I would like to see that money be spread out a little bit differently. She's got it earmarked for pre-K, K, and higher ed, which just made me scratch my head a little bit. We're staring at a fiscal cliff that's very real, and we're not the only town that has this problem. Far from it. I received some MASC training materials. I think you got it too. And the graphic on it for the legislative day on the Hill is literally a guy looking down a cliff. So there's enough of us school districts that are in this position that I feel like the state has to help us. They have to do something. I don't know what that is, but this just isn't going to work. We can't all do overrides ad infinitum. There has to be a better way to do this. Lord knows we give enough money to the state. So I'd like to see that allocated differently, even for this fiscal year. It's a real problem.
One of the things that I had the opportunity to speak to Representative Milkowitz, who's the chair of, obviously, the Committee on Ways and Means in the House, and he said that the goal was to have the new funding that came through. They want to go through the whole cycle, 6 years. I think it was a 6-year plan.
You're talking for the new foundation budget?
Correct.
Yes.
So, which I can understand why you'd want to go through that, but the problem is it's not working now for communities like Grafton. So while you wait 2 more years to decide whether or not you want to change the formula, we fall further and further behind in aid. So I think I would love to see, and I would hope that we would at least look at it and look at the impacts that it's having on communities now, and not wait 6 years before we reinvestigate and decide whether or not we want to change that, because it's not helping, and it's not keeping up with inflation. Inflation over the last 10 years has gone up like 36%, and our aid has not kept up with inflation. and that, which is putting the town of Grafton and its tax base in the position, if we want to continue to have the strong education that we give our students, which is outstanding under the leadership of Superintendent Cummings, we're gonna have to pony up more money, and it would just be nice to see the state step up and take a look at that formula and somehow figure out how to recognize the needs of the suburban communities as well as the urban communities, which you're doing a great job funding those areas, and that's great, but it's leaving the rest of us behind. And I think that's what the issue is. See, I said I was gonna stop talking and I lied.
Well, you did.
Nobody believed you,
apologize.
but it was okay. You're doing great.
What have you been hearing from the other communities that are similar to us, like
Well,
the same thing?
We're just starting to meet with the communities. Again, the House goes first with the budget.
Right.
So I do try to put my meetings off until after the House budget. So we have the governors and then the House budget. And I try to get closer to the amount when the Senate's going to be looking at the budget. So you're my first. I have Millbury lined up next, and then I'll be going to the other communities after that. So you're the first community I'm actually coming out meeting with right now.
Okay.
And again, and you all know, as you all know, the governor was a month behind releasing the budget. But I will say this: the minimum per pupil aid, that has been an issue right from the start. We know that, and this is going back long before I think many of you were on the school committee and that. I know myself, and maybe I don't know, but Rep. Meridian, when this whole student formula was being talked about, being looked at, I know I did. I told some of my communities that I represented that were asking us to support it. We told them that be careful what you ask for, because it doesn't, just because we were going to be looking at the foundation budget formula didn't necessarily mean it was going to come out the way everybody wanted it to come out. And basically, as you described it very well, it came out and there's more of a, I guess I don't want to say more of a sport, but there was a strong emphasis on more of our gateway cities and more culturally diverse communities that have to deal with ESL programs, more language barriers. When the foundation budget was being debated, there were many of us I can only answer for the Senate side, that we were trying to get the per pupil minimum up to it, and this was 5 years ago. We were trying to get it to $50, and we could as the starting point every budget. And at the time we were told no, they wouldn't do it. But since then we've pretty much averaged every budget. I think it's been $50 or higher. So
I think this year it's what, 30?
well,
Yeah.
what's final?
Oh, fine, I got you.
The government.
2020, 2019, 2018 were 30. 2021 was 0. 2017 was 5.
$5.
55.
Right. Okay.
2022 was 80. Last year was big. We got $415 per student, so that was a good one. But over the
But I don't think it's been below $30. Or I thought $50 has pretty much been the lowest it's been.
no, I have all the numbers here if you want to see
Okay.
them afterwards. So.
What was the lowest you have there?
Well, there was 0 in 2021, but other than that, it was.
There's
there was
no-
a
that's-
25 in 2016.
That can't be a correct number. There's no way the state would have given 0 for per pupil minimum.
Yeah, our state aid in 2021 was the same as it was in 2020. I believe that it was supplemented with COVID money, but the Chapter 70 state aid was the same.
Oh, it was the same, but okay, all right.
There wasn't an increase. Usually the
Okay,
increase
all
is
right.
between 30 and
Okay.
that
all right.
particular year,
Okay.
most of the communities got level funded that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, look, I'll go back, and I think a key thing tomorrow is going to be, or this week, to see what the House comes out with. As been stated in the past, the governors come up with budgets, and this goes back to Deval Patrick and to Baker, and we'll see what happens with the Haley administration. They issue their budgets. Sometimes the House is in line with that. Sometimes they go in a different direction, and our budgets are usually a little bit more closer with the House budget. So, we'll have some differences, but, again, I don't know what the House is gonna be proposing, so. And I know the full day kindergarten back, the state used to award, it used to have an $18 million line item. And at one point, I think it was, I don't know if it was the Patrick or Baker administration,
And years ago.
didn't one of them put forth zero to stop that, because what happened was we had communities that the intent of the money was implementation money. But what started to happen was we had communities that every year were getting the money. So it was actually going away from the program of the communities that were looking to start the program, and starting to be a program where every year communities were looking for that funding. So,
My understanding was it was a once and done. We started the kindergarten program. The following year, we got the money that we put in to start that program, but then we never got anything else after that. You had to reapply. I don't even know if we were eligible to reapply. Yeah, it was a once and done thing. So that's a shame that communities took advantage of it. I did have one question, if you don't mind,
Yep.
and it has to do with the resistance to increasing that per pupil spending. Can you talk about, like, what is the reasoning for that resistance? Do you have a sense? Is it many different reasons throughout the Senate, or is it?
well, it's not just, the Senate. Again, this is,
Right.
the budget has to go from the House and the
Oh
Senate,
yeah,
and
no,
vice
I've
versa.
gone and I've read amendments and stuff, and I've seen that they've been debated, but I don't understand what the resistance is to moving
lot-
that number up.
It comes to what we have in the budget. We have to have a balanced budget.
Right.
And they have to, education and support of our local communities is usually the priority of every legislator. But at some point, they have to say no to something. So they've just never supported the higher amounts. I mean, every year I've usually gone in asking basically what the MTA is actually advocated for, was $100. We've never once, well, you're saying $415, I don't, we've never once seen anything of that magnitude.
Well, that 415 came because we had other factors. It wasn't based on we had other factors, unemployment, things like that helped bump that number up last year. Were there other factors that created the 415 last year? Last year was an anomaly.
Do you support the $100 minimum spend?
Well, I'd love to see us go to $100, but I'm one member.
Right, but
So-
if we get a lot of one members supporting it, then it's
Yeah.
good.
Then the problem you then have is if the House, and this is again why it's important to see what the House proposes. If the House proposes $60 or $70 and we come in at 80, then you've got the bargaining back and forth between the two branches.
When Representative Meridian was here, one thing he explained to us is that there's a minimum that the state spends on education every year, and then this new millionaire's tax came in and said that a billion or $2 billion of that dollars has to go towards education. So being,
No, there's a big, they're estimating about, they're looking at where they don't want to estimate the money coming in.
Yep.
They're estimating $1 billion of new revenue
Okay.
coming in from the fair share.
all right, so $1 billion. So if last year you had $10 billion, say you,
Okay, so it's not,
okay,
there seems to be a misperception in the public or in maybe the communities that fair share money, because it says education, is going to Chapter 70. There was never any, so in the referendum or that was put forward, because this was a ballot initiative that went forward. There was never anything that said that the education money was going to Chapter 70. So you have money that could be going to, as you see, you saw the governor's looking at, was it 200 million? We've got early money for early education programs.
Yep.
So.
that was a big deal in her release, I remember reading.
Yeah, in the Senate, actually, last year, we tried to, before the session ended, we had passed an early education, comprehensive reform of early education, but it never made it through. So this is where, I know a lot of people may have thought, in the local communities, that because the fair share was targeted to education and transportation, that education was going to go to Chapter 70. We have post-secondary colleges and universities. They're looking for money. So this is where, you hear that the state has a lot of money. Well, this is how the money is.
Well, I'll
dispersed.
advocate for it to go to Chapter 70. How's that?
Okay.
So I.
I guess my
It
point
should have
was.
been,
I'm
it
sorry.
should have been discussed that it would be, put some of that toward education for
Well,
chapter
it is going
70.
to education, but the question is, there's chapter 70, then there's this University
Right,
of
and I think
Massachusetts system, there's the state college systems, then there's the community college systems, then there's the initiative the focus on trying to increase the opportunities for early education, then there's then there's the kindergarten programs. So this is where, again, everyone says the state has a lot of money. And yes, we do right now because we had a lot of federal money coming in because of the pandemic. That money, the state is not flush with the money that everyone seems to think we have.
Do you know why the universities and state colleges got so much money? Because, I mean, it isn't going to the professors. So what is it going for? Do you know why they got so much? When I look at their numbers and see how much they're getting and the cost of tuition, it doesn't add up to me.
I don't know why, and I will say I do think some of the professors, if you look at the salaries, I think the salaries are significant.
Well, I'm
So
sure
I
that
think
they're getting a salary
most of
increase.
the costs are personnel, and then you also have to look at the type of education that the schools are providing now. A lot of it's technology based, science based, so there's going to be more costs when we're funding labs at Worcester State University, science labs and buildings. That's more expensive than just I don't want to say just putting up a building, but there are more costs related to the education and the technical nature that we have to provide, and for the teachers. You know, everyone says that they want a quality education. Well, similar to what our local K through 12, you want quality teachers, educators, you have to pay them well. You have to give them benefits. We hear the same thing from our post-secondary. And then we have to look at trying to integrate the programs that our colleges and universities are teaching with the workforce. So we have trying to integrate those programs.
I don't have a problem paying the teachers and the professors there, but I'm glad you explained a little bit more that it's going for labs and research and other things like that, which I think is important too. But I keep forgetting that because we don't make increases here, that we're really leaving some children behind. And that concerns me, that some students are not going to catch up over the next 2 or 3 years. So, because chapter 70 is not coming in for us and we have to make decisions, tough decisions too, just like the state does. But in our decisions, we're hurting students in our process. And I wish the state would keep that in mind a little bit more too when they don't give us the money for chapter 70, that some students are going to be left behind.
Well, as you know, the formula is based on certain parameters.
I understand that.
And when they look at the formulas across the state for different communities, sadly, communities like Grafton, Auburn, Millbury, a lot of the very communities that I represent are in this situation. And I'm sure when I go to Millbury within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to hear the same thing.
Well, that's why the point
Then
is-
Worcester, and then obviously the other city of Worcester, which has substantially gained by this formula change.
That's why my point at the beginning when I started to speak is that the formula just doesn't work statewide. It hits the gateway cities, it hits the urban areas, and it really penalizes the suburban areas. And, you know, our local government provides the most basic service, local government provides the most basic service to our residents, police, fire, and education. We need the state to partner with us and help us. And $30 a student increase, when our costs are going up significantly, and the state is becoming a smaller portion of
Well,
our
again,
percentage budget.
I really doubt, and I can be wrong with this, I would be very surprised if you see that $30 stay. I don't think you're gonna see that $30.
Well, that's good. Let's make it 100 and we
Yeah.
can all go home and be happy.
So
Yep.
here's all the per year increases starting from 2011. So you can keep that.
Okay, thank you.
So, I just want to say with the Student Opportunity Act, I kind of felt like the spirit of it was that people want to see more of an investment in education, not a shifting of investment from some communities to other communities, which is what it clearly turned out to be. And so I think that's part of the the issue here is that people weren't expecting to have resources shifted away in order to meet the needs that I think we all agree exist in these other communities that have students with more challenges that result in a more expensive education. But I also, this whole idea of a community being a certain way, I think is wrong, because
What do you mean you lost me in that community being a certain way?
like we have communities who have more need and communities who have less need, and I think we're not homogenous. We're not all the same in Grafton. We don't all have the same ability to afford an override. So when we have to do these repeated overrides in order to fund our education here in Grafton, it ends up either, if we pass an override, we price people out who can't afford it and they go to another town where they're not investing as much in education, or if we in the future if the voters decide not to pass an override, then people who want to spend more on their child's education will move to another town where they're taxing more and spending more on education, and we're going to end up becoming more and more homogenous over time. So I think this when we talk about the different communities as being sort of this sort of caricature of like a middle class community, a wealthy community, I think that's we're kind of creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're talking about it in a way that doesn't actually exist right now, but we're making steps toward that. And I think that's it's not a future that I want for for Grafton or for the state or just generally.
Well said, Dan.
Thanks.
Okay, does the board have any other additional comments they want to make?
Can I just put in a word of support? I'm guessing you're aware that there's a bill that's out there, I believe, at least taking shape. It's focused on out-of-district tuition costs. So since 2011, the average out-of-tuition increase every year has been 2%, up until FY24, and that's been raised to 14%. For us, that difference is about 210,000. So there is a bill out there that I would love your support on to help communities defray that.
Do you know what the bill number is?
I don't. I can get that to you. I don't know if it's even that far. I know
yeah.
MASS has pushed it really
Okay.
hard because everybody's getting hit with just a massive increase.
Okay. So there were over 6,000 bills filed.
Wow.
Committees just started having hearings. So,
I'll reach out. I did send
do you know if it's a
I'm
House
sure you
or
have it
Senate
with you.
bill or?
I believe it's House right now,
Okay, all right.
but I'll reach out tomorrow. Thank you, and thank
Okay.
you for coming.
And so everyone does know that the supplemental budget, there was $65 million for the universal meals. So that was funded. Hopefully that will be made permanent. So hopefully that will be a cost. Also with the, there was increase in funding, well, right now, looking at the special education, the 14%.
Yes, yeah.
So,
That's what
so the state that's another cost that the state is looking at. So when you're looking at the $30, or as you're talking to different communities, that is additional money that's going to our public school system to make up for those. That may not fall within the Chapter 70, but that is money going back to your community for the school system.
Oh, yeah, that would be significant. Just to be clear,
So-
that would actually equate. I hope they both happen, but number-wise, in terms of money, going to $100 per student equates to
Yeah.
that 12% increase being covered.
No, but I'm just saying, when we're talking about this is not going up at this level, the state is also incurring more expenses as far as that goes, as far as trying to get local aid. Look, no matter what we provide for funding, and you can agree or disagree, the communities are always gonna come back looking for more. So, and I'm not saying it's wrong,
No, of course.
but, that we have limited resources. And so we have to try to disperse them as best as we can. And the formula sadly, the formula that was passed did have certain parameters in it. And a lot of those parameters, which years before weren't in there, you had larger communities that have more of a diverse community that had to deal with more ESL programs, more of those cultural type of programs. they were hurting on the other way. So,
This was an overcompensation of that, though.
yeah, and again, I can remember debating this, when we were arguing this on the floor, that we were all trying to get the per pupil student up to try to compensate for where we were losing on the other end. And that's where we were guaranteed that they would not, that they didn't want to put it in statute, but they would try to keep the $50 minimum from going that point forward to help the communities in that situation.
So, one last point I wanted to make. I made the same to Representative Meridian. I sent him this quote earlier from the white paper on Chapter 70. It says, a target local contribution establishes an ideal goal for how much each city and town should contribute toward its foundation budget based on the municipality's wealth. Two measures of municipal wealth are used, aggregate property values and aggregate personal income, with each given equal weight. The problem with that is we only get to tax people based on aggregate property values. We don't get any money based on the income. The state is the one that gets the money based on aggregate personal income. So they're the only ones that can provide money to the state based on personal income. So the formula is basing on something we can control and something we can't control or gain any benefit from.
Okay.
Just wanted to make one point about, when you mentioned that we have limited resources. We have even more limited resources now that the governor's proposing those tax cuts that we learned about recently. So I think the idea that we have limited resources, there's that asterisk to it, that they don't need to be that limited. We don't need to necessarily do all those tax cuts or do them right now, and let this increasing gap in what state aid used to give us for education and what it currently gives us keep growing. So that's when we choose to give a cut on the estate tax. That's choosing not to take that money in and use it on something else. So I think that's to say that we have limited resources, I think is also not taking that into account, that we're making a choice when we do that.
We are making that choice, but we also have to look at the factors of the economy right now. We have a lot of people that are trying to deal with the cost of living. And we have that issue, and we have people that are trying to, from the more affluent community to the middle class to the lower income, that their money is not going as far. So when you're looking at giving a $600 tax credit for dependents, that money can be very important to that family that's trying to get by. When you look at seniors right now that are getting a $1,200 tax deduction and increasing to $2,400 for the seniors in Grafton that are looking at the cost of living increase, that can be significant in helping them get through what we're experiencing right now. So there are other hopefully the cut in the corporate tax. Massachusetts is one of, I think, only 2 or 3 states that have that. That could be making us more attractive to investors that come here. So that could be, which if we get more investment, more companies here, we have more jobs and more opportunity.
See,
And the state tax, again, we're one of the few states that have that.
See, I think with the corporate tax, the estate tax, that's where I disagree. I think the affordability problem in Massachusetts is not with corporations coming here. They're coming here because we have highly skilled workers. We have a great economy here in Massachusetts. Taxes aren't driving businesses away, and lowering taxes on businesses, I don't think is going to help with the affordability problem in Massachusetts. That's from this stuff that we're talking about, from Chapter 70 aid not keeping up, from towns having to do overrides. That's where the affordability problem is. And the estate tax, I just don't see.
Well, the estate tax is going to could help the very people in this room. Someone who doesn't have a lot of money, but you have a family, you have a relative that sadly passes away, and
with over $3 million.
Well, that's if this goes through. Right now, it's at $1 million.
Right.
And we all know with the cost of living and the property and with properties we see in a lot of our communities, that $1 million can be reached very easily right now. And there are people who have family members, and when they pass away, they may need that as they go forward in their life. So, you know, the last, I can't even remember the last time. So I've been in the legislature for 15 years. We've never raised it. At some point, there has to be cost of living, there has to be increases for certain factors that are going to benefit people.
Yeah.
And even the capital gains, that's short-term capital gains, that's on investments. So again, that could help people who are investing in increasing their income. So if you want to tie this into a bigger picture, if you can look at what we just did for the tying in money to the CHIPS Act. We've got $52 billion, $1 trillion, I think, that the federal government passed. We just passed in the budget, $125 million worth of bonding, which that money is going to a regional initiative to try to create chip manufacturing. Now you can say, oh, we don't need those programs, the company's gonna come here. That's not true. If you look at what we've done with life sciences and the biotech and the hospital industry, by providing those tax incentives, we have had companies that have come here, and Massachusetts, some of our biggest economic drivers are industries that we have helped, that we have provided incentives for to bring them here, to create jobs. Look at UMass Medical right here we have in the city of Worcester, and the school that they have there. I mean, a lot of that is coming, a lot of that benefit has come from tax incentives. When we're competing with other states, everyone's got a different opinion on this, but when we're competing in other states, we have to make ourselves look more attractive. And you are right. And some of the incentives that we offer aren't even as high as some of the other states are. But you factor the incentives and the skilled workforce, the educated workforce we have, that factors into it. So that benefits when we provide those are all costs that affect what we can spend in the budget. So those are all factors that are being looked at.
Right. I just don't think tripling the exemption for the estate tax up to $3 million
Well, again,
before even tax. It's not that you can't pass on more than $3 million. That's when it starts to get taxed. I just tripling it all at once, I don't think is necessary.
So let's, and again, the House is debating the governor's tax bill Thursday. What comes out of the governor's, so the estate tax increase that the Senate proposed last July was $2 million. The governor went to $3 million. We don't know what's going to come out of the House debate on Thursday. They may come back and they may keep it at a $3 million. May keep it at $2 million. We don't know. So this is, again, we have to wait to see what comes out of their proposal.
So what's the time frame moving forward with the budget? The House releases their budget tomorrow, and then the Senate has, 30 days before you have?
No, we don't have so the House will come with their budget. I think they give until 5 o'clock Friday to file amendments. And then next week, school vacation week, I think they pretty much, the Ways and Means and all that,
Shuts down.
think they look at all the amendments. Because there are hundreds of amendments that are filed. Then the following week, I believe the House will come in and do their budget. The Senate, we usually release the budget to the end of the second week, beginning of the third week. We will then have until that Friday to file amendments, and then it's the week of Memorial Day, Memorial Day weekend, the week before that we will debate the budget.
So first week of June is when you.
So the first week of June is when you'll have a Senate budget and a House budget. Then the conference committees will get together.
So you'll be ready for June 30th?
Well, hopefully.
Well, there's been some years you have, some years you haven't.
Oh, yeah. I think most of the time, since I've been in office, we've never made the July 1st. So we've always had to do a 1/12 budget. So.
I guess the message we really appreciate you being here tonight. The Finance Committee has been debating this and talking about it a lot, as has the Select Board and the School Committee. So we appreciate you listening to us. If there's anything you can do to aid this community and support us, take a look at that formula, get that minimum contribution, or the $30 to $50 to $100. we would really appreciate that. So anything you can do would be very, very helpful.
It's my pleasure. And again, a lot of us, and I'm not going to speak for Representative Meridian, but a lot of us were very frustrated when the whole new foundation budget formula was released and passed. And again, many of you may not have been here. Every community I represented, they all fought for it. Every one time we went to it, I went to a meeting, they wanted a new formula. And they were told, be careful what you ask for. It comes out, and not everyone got what they wanted. And sadly, a lot of the more of the medium income wealth communities actually where they really got impacted. I wish it didn't happen, and it's frustrating every year that we have to come back and we have to deal with the fact that those, like the middle class, we always say the middle class gets hit with more of the expenses, the middle community gets more of a burden. Middle wealth communities getting more of a burden put on them. So I wish I had better, information for you as far as that goes, but we can try to advocate for more money, and we will try to advocate. All I will say is just I would watch the House numbers closely. Since I've been in office, the House has always been the baseline. Because it's the Senate.
Senate always comes in a little higher than the House.
The only year that we didn't come in was my first year in office, and that's when we had the recession. And literally every month, the budget was dropping $100 million a month. So that was the only time.
2008. Yeah, I remember that very, very well.
Yeah. So other than that, so that's the advantage the Senate does have, because we have another month more of revenue information that we have. We have that advantage. But many times the House and the Senate will also try to agree on what the local aid numbers will be.
Andy had something he wanted to say.
Yeah, only because you kind of opened the door for it. And
Go right ahead.
appreciate you being here and advocating, listening to, Mr. Haddad over there. I guess my only point would be, and I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, thinking about, the whole situation and circularly, you mentioned increases in state aid for, seniors here in town. Which is great and something, we definitely want to endorse. But I think it's important to remember that in the same breath, if we're underfunding schools, those are the same seniors that will be facing their third override in 10 years. So they may be getting more relief at the state level, but at the town level, we're still putting a burden on those people.
So the money they save in the state, they're giving back to the town.
Right.
Yeah. It's a vicious cycle. It's an
Well,
excellent point, Andy.
So the thing that I was going to bring up is one way that you guys could help us, I think, is if, what I'm hearing is towns like Grafton have been disadvantaged by the new foundation formula.
Yes.
And that personally it's a priority of yours to try to get us as much funding as you can, but towns like Grafton tend to get what's left over. It's sort of that
Well, I'm not
seems to be the flavor of the conversation. Is that we have to fund all
towns
these
similar to Grafton are getting what you meet in the formula, what your community characteristics provide you based on the formula. So you're not getting what's left over. Every community that has meets those same parameters.
But every
get
program
that.
that we've talked about that brings additional funds in, what I've heard is we have to pay for this and we have to pay for this and what I haven't heard is we have to pay for Chapter 70, which for a town like Grafton and the way that we partner with the state is really important. That's our priority. That's what we have to have.
Well, the state is partnering. Right now, the state is partnering with you. They developed a new formula. Foundation budget formula was established. The state has been meeting the 6-year goal. Every year, the increase has been based on what the state has targeted to make that 6-year implementation of it. So from the state's end, we have been funding the foundation budget based on the new foundation budget formula, which is increasing the budget, the foundation Chapter 70 budget formula.
What's happening, Matt, is that increase, we're not getting that increase. The urban communities, the gateway.
Getting a higher increase.
I totally understand that. I understand the numbers, but what I also understand is that you've recognized that that's been an issue for several years, is what you've said.
It's been an issue the moment it was passed.
But it's an issue that you can deal with. It's an issue that can be addressed, that has been recognized for several years, that you are not addressing for towns like Grafton. That's my issue. The other thing is that is driving our overrides. it's driving overrides. So for all the people that get upset about overrides, you know, what is it, 60% of our budget is schools?
Yep.
80% of that budget is salaries. We don't pay our teachers exorbitant amounts. We're in the middle of all the communities around us. We're competitive enough to be able to.
We're still pretty far down.
We're far down, but you know.
So here's a question for you.
So Grafton
What-
is a good place. We provide an excellent education for the dollar. Grafton is a great place to invest additional dollars. They go a really long way in Grafton, much further than in most other communities.
Well, I'm going to argue most communities you can make that argument for.
Nope,
No.
absolutely not.
Sorry.
Well, are you,
But we're getting to the
You're-
point where
you're
we're gonna
just
have to
wrong
start
about
cutting
that.
programs.
Grafton per pupil is bottom of the barrel in terms of.
After everything
14,000
we've
per
built,
student, right? 14,700 per student, which is the lowest in the area.
and after,
So we're
after
absolutely
everything
doing the
we've
best
built
we
over
can.
2 overrides, we haven't even built back up to kind of like a baseline standard, and we're still excelling, which is awesome and great for the business plans for the state. But we're facing a crisis where we're not going to be able to educate kids to the level that they need to be educated to in order to be part of that well-educated workforce you talked about. We're maybe 10, 15 years away from that, where kids graduating school in Massachusetts, first of all, they're going to have trouble graduating because now the MCAS minimum has increased. It's a never-ending circle of death.
I do want to get around
By
to my
1,000
point
cuts.
though, and it's to loop back to what Dan was saying, which is not all residents in Grafton are the same, and it ties into what Andy was saying too. So I understand you guys have fiscal constraints that you have to respect, and you have a budget that you have to put together. You've got a list of priorities. Everything has to be put in an order and funded, and but at the end of the day, it's driving overrides in Grafton. Each one of those overrides substantially impacts anybody who's on a fixed income or who's in that lower tier, right?
Yep.
I think we all can agree that that's a true statement. What the state can do when we think about cost of living and helping that population that's going to be impacted in Grafton is you can look at the limits for things like abatements. We're at the max right now in terms of the abatements, the work off programs, that sort of stuff. That could be moved up to help that class of citizen in Grafton who's going to be most heavily impacted by, you know, the working families in Grafton who are going to be impacted by these overrides most seriously when we have them, because we're doing everything that we can, but the state isn't keeping up and allowing us to give tax relief to those people that get impacted so hard. And you're also not giving us the funding to be able to maintain the level of services that we have here as they are, without having to do that, without having to penalize those lower income people in Grafton. So it just puts us in a very difficult situation. It would help a lot if the state could give Grafton and towns like Grafton more latitude to help our most economically challenged constituents.
I think the point that you were making, what I heard you saying at the beginning is what I tried to say earlier, that just because the state made a commitment for 6 years on a broken formula, doesn't mean they have to stick to it. And it seems to me the commitment from the state is they're gonna stick to that 6-year formula, which means we won't get any relief until they look at it in 2027. What I think I heard you say at the beginning is, don't wait the 6 years, look at it now.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's what I thought I heard you.
There's
that's what I thought
there's
you were
two
going.
sides of it though. If we
I agree
can't
with you 100%.
can't whip the votes to increase the per pupil additional spending every year, which I think it's a no-brainer. You don't have to stick to the foundation formula. You guys can fund what you want to fund. What I'm hearing is you saying it's our priority for Chapter 70, but we're not seeing that priority reflected in the budget for Grafton. It's just the reality of it. The other side of it is how do we help our lower income and fixed income people in Grafton who have to bear overrides every few years because the state, we just showed you the graphs, which shows that the state percentage of funding from the state to fund our school system drops every year. And that's on a trajectory that continues. So this is not getting better, it's getting worse.
What is the per pupil number, target number that, I know I threw out $100 that I always ask for, but what's the target number? I mean, other than
What's this,
450.
what's the state average, Jay? I don't know if you know off the top of your head. What's the state average per pupil spending?
Yeah, that's different than the 100.
I know, that's why I'm asking a different question, to answer his question. It's like 15,500?
Hard
way
not-
more.
Oh, it's
It's more than that?
No, actually,
You have
I'm
a
looking
you
at
have a
more
graph.
the per pupil.
Oh, I know, but I
Right.
wanted, we're at $14,700 per pupil, that's what
We're in the bottom 10.
we're in the bottom 10.
Our
And the
per
state
pupil-
average is what, 16, 17,000?
I think it's even more than that.
I'd like to see us move up
We have a
closer to the
chart
state
that
average.
shows that has the line right through it.
That's what I would like to see. I'd like to see us move closer to that state average, and the only way we can get there is if the state does something with that formula.
State
to help
average
us.
for 2021 was 19,000 per pupil.
Okay, we're at 14,700. Thank you. That's worse than I thought.
Yeah, our per pupil spending increased this coming year compared to last year by $532.
And our costs went up
more than that.
way more than that per student. Thank you, Evan. That's a good number.
And if they start looking at the formula in, what did you say, 2027?
That's what they're saying.
And how many years is it gonna take to actually fix it? We've got kids that are gonna go right through the system, disadvantaged, and they're never gonna catch up, ever.
You talked earlier about making priorities, and everyone understands that you have to do that, but you talked about giving some tax breaks and cuts to be able to put money back in people's pockets to improve their lives. But, teach someone to fish, or give someone a fish, they eat for a day, teach someone to fish, they fish for their lives. The best thing that we can do to make people's lives better is to give them the best education possible. And for that, we need to be able to fund it.
Okay. So we'll go back and look at what I was going to tell you is that we'll try to get the per pupil. I can't do anything with the formula. The formula is what it is. The formula was established in the early 90s, and it took until, 5 years ago, 4 years ago,
2018?
for it to get changed.
Current formula says 2007, according to the white paper.
Yeah, but then it was, on the Student Opportunity Act, they changed the formula. a little
Yeah.
bit.
That was before I got it. That was even in office. So it was,
They've changed.
We can't
it
blame you for the
twice.
original formula. I don't blame you for the revised formula.
so, well, I don't even take blame for that.
I'm joking, sir.
But the only thing I was going to say is Grafton is not getting the leftovers. There's the formula. Grafton is getting what's based on the formula, same as other communities are.
Understood.
So that's the only thing I'm saying. When you said that I'm saying Grafton's getting the leftovers, that's not the case.
It kind of is, because
It's not the case. Look, you get
we get the
You-
bare minimum.
you get the formulas established. There are
Yes.
certain parameters of the formula. Grafton meets certain ones. People may not be happy with what the formula is, but it's not the leftovers.
We don't benefit from the formula, I think is a point that Matt's making and that Greg's making.
And this is a
Formula says
fixable
we
problem.
get the minimum amount. We get the same amount as every other
Communities that
community
meet those
that-
characteristics.
doesn't that. So yeah, so there is an absolute minimum that every school district in the state is guaranteed, and that's what we get.
That's it.
Okay.
So
Not a
we are not getting any benefit from any computations in the formula other than the hold harmless provision of there's a certain amount increase per student per year.
And by the way,
And
that's not in
actually
the law.
The
That's
hold
not in the law.
harmless provision is part of the.
that's-
That is the phrasing used in.
Yeah, but that's not in the law. They've made a commitment to do that. They can change their mind any day, any minute, and not hold us harmless anymore. It's not in the law.
My only comment is the community and anyone in the Grafton situation is not getting the leftovers. It's based on the formula. That's all. That's all I'm making the comment on. Was that the phrase when it said there's a formula, the state is following the formula, and Grafton, similar to communities in the same situation, is getting that. Getting that funding.
Yeah, so the formula gives us 0, and then there's the hold harmless that gives us the actual increase.
So for tonight, I think we were excited to have you in, as we did with Representative Meridian, to arm you with some numbers and some facts to really go fight for Grafton and get us as much funding as you possibly can. So I want to thank you very much for coming in. Does
Thank you.
anybody else have any
Thank you,
other
Mike.
comments?
Nope, we do appreciate you
for
being
coming
here.
Thank you.
I just want to very quickly say, I think I think we were a lot more harsh with you than we were with Representative. Probably because like you go home after this under pressure conversation and think, oh, I really should have said that, and then you come back and we had a second chance and we got to say it to you.
Wish you came when Dave came.
But I wasn't even here last time, so.
I just want to say an extra thank you for being
Yes,
here. And
we
I
do
think
appreciate
maybe we
it
should
a lot.
ask our representative to watch the recording of this to get all those extra.
So when he told me I missed the beating up, that,
Yeah, he did.
This was worse.
His was a fraction of it.
We're all gonna send him the video.
Yeah.
thank you, thanks,
And the
Thank you,
chart.
Senator.
thank you.
Thank
so
you very much.
Thank you.
Sending the chart to.
All right. So I know the school committee has a meeting that they need to get to in about 5 minutes. FinCom, you guys need to
We're adjourning, we'll
adjourn.
be here, just so everybody knows, we're gonna be holding our, public hearing on the warrant article starting tomorrow night at 7:00, continuing, Thursday night at 7:00.
Excellent.
So, we're gonna be in this room on Wednesday, we're gonna be upstairs on Thursday. Somebody kicked us out of here, we don't have the pool we used to have. We have to go upstairs. Nice going, Evan,
I
thank
dislike that.
you. Want us to stay here?
Yeah.
If you have pull, put us back down
Put
here.
us back down
CPC
here,
and
yeah.
a-
Mark, we just need to finish up on tomorrow night.
Or we can finish up to, no.
No, you have people
No.
coming on Thursday.
Yeah,
That's
we
the
have
problem.
We have to do Thursday.
Hey, if you keep us in this room for 2 nights, I'll be happy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm gonna adjourn the finance committee and thank the select board and school committee for, inviting us tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you all for your
Thank you for
contributions.
coming. Thank you, Colleen, for organizing.
Absolutely.
West School Committee. Yep.
Alright, so
gonna
as
go
soon as
first.
everybody, heads off to their other commitments, we'll, start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Nope, you should say it.
Gotta say it.
Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do have a couple of announcements this evening. The Grafton Gazebo 5K road race returns on May 13th. Sign up by April 25th for their early bird price. There will be awards for the top 3 in 10 age groups from 8 and under to 70 plus. The Recreation Department is also holding its inaugural community yard sale on May 6th. Sign up to sell at your house or on the common by April 24th. The sale will run from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Get details on these events and register at graftonrec.com. The Grafton Tennis Club will be opening next month. The tennis club membership offers access to 2 clay courts with lights for evening play. For more information, please go to graftontennisclub.com. So there are no public hearings tonight. First on the agenda is an appointment for a board of registrars, which we have Candy LaValle joining us on Zoom to talk to us a little bit about. Hi, Candy. Oh, you're right down the hall. Come join us.
We were still open, so I stayed working. Can you hear me tonight?
We can.
Okay. So I'm just here. I guess I don't know what questions you might have, but as you know, we have a vacancy on the Board of Registrars. And since my last meeting with you and discussing early voting, in order to do that, excuse me, we have to have 50% of the registrars recommend that. So we have to have a meeting, and we've had trouble getting a quorum. So with a few different factors. So Justin Phillips used to serve on the board, and I contacted him to see if he'd be willing to fill in, so that way we could have a quorum and meet this week to discuss, whether or not that will be happening. And that's basically what I'm here for today.
Okay. So this is a little bit different than how we typically appoint board of registrars. Usually people, Justin would have sent us a form saying that he's interested in applying. We usually like to say hi to them and meet the candidate and do a little chat. But I understand you're under time constraints because of the election and everything you guys are facing. So does the board have any questions or comments?
How long will you be in the position, Candy?
This is just to get through our meeting. So we sent out a letter to the chair of the Republican Town Committee. The step, since there's a vacancy, is you have to notify them, and they have 45 days to submit a list of at least three names for the board to pick. So that expires on April 28th. So it would literally be for this meeting or anything we have to do until that vacancy can be filled.
That was my next question. How long will he serve? So he'll be interim until the 28th or thereabouts?
Yes.
Okay, so should we say, maybe May 1st just to be safe or,
So as long as we'll have, they have till April 28th to get me the name. So whenever your next meeting is, then you would be able to appoint. So whenever your first meeting in May, we'll put a spot on there to appoint somebody. So I think just do it through that date.
okay. I mean, I think it's important to just include, the length of the term in the motion, so.
Good.
I think so.
Okay. I move the board vote to appoint Justin Phillips as interim registrar through May 2nd, 2023 on the Grafton Board of Registrars.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we gotta do
Aye.
a roll
Roll
call
call.
because we're right.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Mead eye.
All right, declare the motion carried. All right, thank you so much, Candy, for coming in and explaining that to us. Up next, we have some fire department promotions to regular status.
I move the board vote to affirm the promotions of Ron Gardner, Ronan Cast McBride, Joseph Matthew, Andrew Miller, and Kevin O'Brien to regular status at the Grafton Fire Department.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Mead eye.
All right, declare the motion carried. First, new business, continued business is common victual license for firehouse dogs at 82 Worcester Street. Yeah, absolutely. Come on up.
Bring my wife, okay?
You can grab one of those. Yeah. Welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
My name's Joe Ferraro. My wife's Susan. And we're here for a license.
Excellent.
So let's do a little background here.
Oh, go ahead, huh?
So Best of Show, we purchased that, and we're gonna rename it Firehouse
Firehouse
Dogs.
Dogs.
We're redoing some things with it, redoing the menu. Sorry if all you guys like everything on it, but it was
Yeah.
too much. So,
I'm from,
yeah.
I'm from Worcester,
Worcester.
and my father was a fireman. So we're going with that theme.
I like it.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So we're gonna see some hydrants up front?
Well, there is a hydrant there. There's actually two.
Oh, all right.
One's yours and one's mine. But yeah, we have a hydrant.
Nice.
And we're gonna make your town proud. I think we got some good ideas.
Yeah. You can
What
tell
we
him
want to do.
this. He mentioned meatballs the other day.
Yeah, what I am gonna do is not only hot dogs, but I'm gonna make my homemade meatballs, okay, and Italian sausage. So the subs will also be in the vehicle.
Very
Wonderful.
exciting.
So we're looking forward to it.
Nice.
I'm retired with nothing to do.
When
You
do
need
you
to find
hoping
something
to when do you hoping to open?
April 29th, we wanna open.
29th, yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, does the board have any other questions or comments? Okay, I can take a motion.
I move the board vote to approve a common victular license for Firehouse Dogs at 82 Worcester Street.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Thank you.
Mead eye.
Can't wait
Very
to
much
try 'em.
carried.
Yeah, you're
Thank you
right.
very
Thank
much.
you very
Welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see you.
All right. Up next is a joint meeting with the TIF committee. Do we have members of the TIF committee that if you guys want to come have a seat up here? How many is on that committee? 3? Do we have a quorum with the 2?
Give a quorum with you.
Okay. Hi, Carl. How are you?
How's everybody doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So we're here to discuss the Feedback Earth TIF. So if the TIF committee wants to lead that off and tell us about all the work you guys have done to put into this, and we'll talk about the TIF and come to an agreement tonight.
Sounds good. Red, you want to lead off a little bit, I guess?
Sure. So we met with Feedback Earth quite a while ago, actually over the winter, about their project over on Creeper Hill Road. They were going to invest about $2 million into a new addition and new processes over there. They're also going to create 30 jobs, and 15 of those will be for Grafton residents. So Grafton residents will get first dibs at those 15 jobs. They also wanted a fairly, they asked, and of course, when people come in for a TIF, they ask for obviously more than they need, and they did. They asked for a 10-year TIF, and there was quite a spreadsheet that they gave us and everything like that. But we ended up working through it very quickly, and gave them a 5-year TIF at 100%, 75, 50, 25, and 1% in the 5th year, and they were happy with that. And very hardworking people, very good company. I know that they've had their fire issues, which I know they're working on, and they were working on before this most recent fire. But they're really good people, and they want to stay in town, and they want to create jobs. They also want to build a larger facility somewhere else in town. So they're a good for EDC. They're a great prospect to to stay in town and create jobs, and that's why we gave them the TIF on the $2 million investment.
Okay. All right. Does the board have any questions or comments, or anybody? Carl, do you want to add to that?
No, Ray obviously did a real good job there, Ray. Thank you. To echo Ray's point, these individuals have started this company, and I know they've had a couple of challenges with the smell of the facility. They've really worked hard on correcting that, and I think they've come to a good solution with that. And I just think, the expansion in the area, in the town, and 30 new jobs is just it's a home run for us as a town. So I'm with Ray. We're fully behind it.
And while Kyle brought up about the smells, one of the issues that they had, and when the smells were a real issue, is that they were cooking soy, which is highly profitable for their business. It was actually the most profitable portion of their business. They have stopped doing that. They haven't done that since we had the smell issue, and they won't be doing it again until they design a system that is going to eliminate the smell. So the smells that you smell now are it's like cooking bread. I smell it at my house, but only once in a while. So they really respond very quickly to public comment and are very open and available for anybody. So.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. So this has been a great business to work with. I've seen them be very responsive to complaints and concerns. I think, this is a short-term TIF, so it, won't impact the town much at all. Longer term, we have a business that's going to have additional jobs in Grafton for Grafton residents. We'll have additional taxes long term as well as they build out their equipment and all that equipment gets taxed. So that's all good for the town. I see no reason at all to hold this up. I'm in full support of it. I think they're a great business. They've been really good partners to us, and long term, I think this is a great deal for Grafton.
So I did have a question on section A4, where it talks about give as much notice as practical if they were to transfer control. Is it advantageous of us to put maybe a minimum amount of time, 10 days, 14 days, just so we don't get accidentally overlooked in the process of being notified? I don't want to complicate it either, but if I just didn't, that stood out to me.
Here we are.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't hold back. I was still going to ask.
Let me just reread that one line that wasn't what I thought there'd be questions on.
So I don't think the TIF would follow to a new owner without the approval of the board. So, and a transfer of it.
Yeah, I don't think you need the 10-day.
I was just inventing a time frame. I just didn't know.
Yeah, so if the company decides to sell one or more of its facilities documented in this agreement, and or its operation, the company shall give the town as much notice as practicable. Said notice shall be given to the Grafton Town Administrator. So at the point of sale, this TIF becomes null.
No.
Okay.
So it really doesn't matter.
How much notice? Okay.
Nope. Nope.
Perfect.
I have a question. How many people do they employ now?
I thought it was somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 20. Is that about right, Ray?
So it's a pretty significant.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was 15 to 20.
Yeah.
And then this is my first time being on the board for a TIF. How does this compare to other TIFs that we have done or looked at? I know you mentioned the
Well,
10-year thing, but it's obviously
I-
significantly shorter.
I can tell you about other tips that we gave to the car wash. We gave a 10-year TIF to the car wash to create 16 jobs. The car wash has since been sold, but 16 jobs were not created. But that's the most recent TIF that was given out, I think.
Okay. And it was similar percentages?
As far as TIFs that I've worked on, and also TIFs that I've seen, working with Mass Development and other organizations, this is pretty much right in line. Usually year 1 and 2 is aggressive, year 3 and 4 will start to taper. If this was a huge TIF, you'd see that go out to the full 20, and you'd see percentages like 100%, 95, 90.
Yep.
But because this is so short term, that's why you see the 175, 50, 25.
Okay.
So I think it's comparable to other ones that I've seen. The language of this is boilerplate from Mass Development. So we took this as our starting place. I didn't do any work on the negotiation part. I just took the numbers and got this through Mass Development and their process. So
I actually think the last TIF that was actually approached and actually given was the UPS property, and it never came into effect. So.
Yep.
Yeah, they never signed it.
I move the board vote to approve the TIF for Feedback Earth. Sorry, did I jump it?
No, I love it.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm going to start over.
Andy takes charge.
Sorry.
Bam, I'm done talking about this.
I move the board vote to approve the TIF for Feedback Earth as written and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Fully aye.
Mead eye.
Awesome. Declare the motion carried. So thank you guys so much for coming in. Ray, you had to be here, but Carl, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for the work on this.
My pleasure. Yep, you bet.
One point of clarity, Madam Chair. So this will be held in the town administrator's office. It is also a warrant article. Town meeting has to accept the TIF, and that is when it goes into effect.
That was my other question. Thank you.
Yes. Yep. Yes. That's all I have to say about that.
Great. Moving right on.
If I could make a comment, it's a great background for Ray. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
I like it too, Carl.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Carl.
Up next is to discuss funding for George Hill Road and take any relevant action. So,
Okay, we're back. So I've taken most of the feedback that we received at our public forum and condensed it into what essentially weighs out the 3 options for the board to consider. We do need to make a decision on this tonight if we are going to have any kind of debt exclusion, as we're going to have to vote on some language to put onto the ballot. This is preempting town meeting's vote, but this is the process for towns that have a election before or the deadline to post on the election is before their town meeting. So we have to have these in by April 14th. Our town meeting's not till May 9th, so it was a little chicken or the egg, just in case you were wondering. So you essentially have 3 options, and I'm going to go into a little more detail on each one. You have the debt exclusion and grant funds. We did start working on 2 separate grants for this proposal. One is the MassWorks grant, and one is the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness. Thank you. Municipal Vulnerability Project, also known as the MVP program. And so what we're doing is we're splitting the 2 grants asks. The stormwater component, we're going after MVP money, and the asphalt portion, we are going after MassWorks money. So those are our two current grants that we're chasing. The second one is to utilize a debt exclusion, some road stabilization money, as well as some grant funding. Third option that came out of that meeting is a debt exclusion strictly aimed at the road stabilization account. And so what that would look like is you would select a chunk of money, exclude that debt as, nope, I shouldn't be saying debt exclusion, I apologize. It's essentially adding to the override that we already have for roads. And what you would do is pick an amount of money. That amount of money would go towards the George Hill Road bond until such time as the bond is paid in full, and then that money would remain in your asphalt management program, essentially. Go to the next slide. So option one, this is debt exclusion and grant. And remember, all of this conversation is contingent, and these are guesses on grant awards. You could get 100,000, we could get 5 million, right? And we're obviously going for the maximum amount and lobbying as much as we can, but none of it is guaranteed. So the cost per household with the debt exclusion and grant option, if we receive no grant, it's $96.51 per year.
And that's 15 years.
That's 15 years. Yes, thank you, Matt. Cost per household with potential grant award, let's say it was $2 million, and that was the maximum that Mass Works will give you. And so we're just using that as a placeholder. You'd be down to $66.03 per year on an average family, average household. Option two is a debt exclusion, road stabilization, and grant funds. So what we did here is we just split the baby. The estimated nut on $7 million is $630,000. So if we took 315 from our existing road stabilization funds each year for 15 years, and we did a debt exclusion for the remaining 315,000, you'd be at $48.26 per person. If we were to receive the grant, or a grant, or combination of grants, that would bring us down to somewhere in the neighborhood of $33.02. Now, you'll notice it's still the same amount, the 315. Did not break it down farther than that. So what would happen in this case is, that number is going to change because we're not going to do what's called level debt service. We would do a more aggressive repayment to save money on interest. Next one. And then this is the last one. So let's say you imagine $500,000 annually added to the road stabilization account. So for the first 15 years, the $500,000 would go towards George Hill Road. After 15 years, the monies could be utilized for the asphalt management program. Cost per household on that is $76.19 in perpetuity. And those are kind of your three options. As I said in the public outreach meeting, I'm not a fan of using our municipal stabilization money for this. We're really just getting to the place where we should be per our management plans. And that was something that this board has tasked us with doing.
That's 6% reserves.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be at 6.01, I believe.
Great.
After this town meeting. So we're
right on the mark.
Right. That's what we're trying to be. Could you use those funds to buy this down? You absolutely could. And that is certainly a conversation we could have. That's just not my initial gut of what Grafton should be doing with those reserves.
Unless we increase the reserves, say 500,000, and then how would you?
No, I'm talking about municipal stabilization as opposed to road stabilization.
Oh,
so
I
our municipal
see.
stabilization is about 6% of our budget,
Mhm.
which is exactly the target that we're trying to hit in our financial management policies. So if you say took $1 million to pay buy this down a little bit, that's going to significantly drop what our percentage of budget is. Not to say that we wouldn't get back there, but it's been a lot of work to get
Well,
to it.
to get back there, you'd have to sacrifice other services.
Yep. Correct.
Right. In several future years.
Yep.
All right. Well, that was a great recap. How does everybody feel?
And so this option 3.
Yep.
The 500, I mean, how did you come up with, so we're gonna do this in perpetuity then after the 15 years? I mean, it
Because-
makes sense in some ways, but for how long? We're just,
So it would,
We're just gonna keep
instead of it
funding
being
that.
a debt exclusion, so debt exclusion, and I'll just explain this for the folks at home. So debt exclusion is, you're gonna exclude debt for a set amount in a set period of time. So that's essentially funding a project. Like taking out a loan from a bank. Once that is done, it's done. You don't owe any more money.
right,
With an override, that $500,000, let's say, it never stops. Like you have the 1.5 million now for roads. So what it would essentially be doing is moving with the 1.5 up to 2 million. The first 15 years you would pay exclusively towards George Hill Road. After 15 years, it would just continue. You'd
right, so
have more money in the asphalt management plan.
right, and so we're making that decision that we're gonna have more money in that management plan forever.
Right.
In addition to taking care of George Hill for slightly, and you can't do a,
You could make that number whatever you'd like.
Right.
So that was just, here's a general idea
Yeah.
that was floated.
Right.
I'll pick an easy number to work with.
and you can't do grant funding then because you're doing this
Right.
separate than
Right.
that other
Where the grant money, well, I say right, but not really. So what you would do is, let's say it's $500,000 and per year in perpetuity, and you get a grant. And so the money we have to pay back on our George Hill Road comes in at $480,000 annually. Well, there's $20,000 that doesn't have to go to pay that George Hill Road debt. Right?
That could go towards the asphalt management plan.
Right. What? Yeah.
And in 15 years from now, $2 million to fund our asphalt management plan makes a lot of sense because 1.5 probably won't be cutting it 15 years from now. So making that decision now as a long-term vision to get us where we'll probably need to be, as well as fixing a road we need to fix now, I think makes a lot of sense.
but no grant, back
It-
up to the grant thing.
Any grant we got
Yeah.
would
So you can
reduce
still
the amount
apply
we
for
have to pay for. Oh yeah, you can still the grants.
Okay,
We're going after every dollar we can
and we
find.
can
That's
still utilize it with.
yeah.
this
You would in theory, the bond for George Hill comes in at just pick a whole number, 400,000. That means 400,000 gets paid every year towards the bond, and $100,000 of this increase goes towards asphalt management.
Which is never gonna go away. We're always gonna be maintaining roads in Grafton. So I think, for me personally, I like the idea of increasing the road, override. Because we have tons of roads. And as Ray pointed out at the outreach meeting, George Hill Road, there's another George Hill Road right behind George Hill Road that needs to get done, and I can't remember the name of it. But there's always gonna be a George Hill Road. And we can't just do debt exclusions every time. We have to really look at the needs of the whole town and make sure we're addressing all the roads, not just one at a time. And I think this idea would do that.
And right now we're at 1.5.
Yes.
Correct.
And this is what, $20 less than if we went for the option 1 at the very
Yep.
beginning.
Except this never ends.
Correct.
Never ends, but has the ability to help all roads.
Sure.
Yes. I'm focusing on the timeline because I want to just make sure everybody understands.
Yep. No, that's good.
And this was something that came out of our talks after the outreach meeting, talking to residents. And I think personally it's either this option or option 2, which is the splitting the baby, as we say. And the reason that I like option 2 as well is that, George Hill Road is a outlier as far as this cost, per mile of road. That's an expensive
Right.
country road. However, those folks on George Hill Road have been paying into the road stabilization account with the expectation that some of that money is going to come back and pave their road, which is exactly the mindset that they should have. And so I think as far as fairness goes, if you're looking at, this option 2, I think it's a fair way to look at it because it's an outlier as far as costs, but George Hill Road also is a road in Grafton that should be included on the asphalt management plan. which it is. We just can't afford to do the whole thing. So that's for me, it's, I like option 2 and I like option 3 if you think there's support to do option 3.
Sorry, another question, just so I understand. So on option 3, we can still get a potential grant award, but that's not going to change that bottom
Correct.
line of $76.
Yeah, because you're
It'll
gonna
just go
you're
into
gonna pick a
back
number,
in.
right?
Yeah.
It just funds more asphalt management plan.
What would be your elevator pitch for 2 versus 3? Because we're gonna have to sell this at town meeting, right?
Right.
So how?
And at the ballot.
Right. How do we convince people that it is more worthwhile to do, 76 a year as opposed to a potential of 33 a year?
Right. So I guess the elevator pitch is you've funded roads at $1.5 million a year, which is awesome. It's a step beyond what many communities in the Commonwealth have done as far as committing to repair that infrastructure. The thing that people need to understand is, when we do a bridge like Stowe Road, that's $1.2 million. It's tiny, but these dollars do not go as far as you think that they're going to go. And so as our costs for bituminous and oil-based products go up, that $1.5 million goes less and less and less far. You're not getting the bang for your buck that you did when you originally envisioned your 1.5. So if you take this additional, again, picking a number, $500,000, and put that towards George Hill Road for the next 15 years, you're then going to be funding the program at a more adequate level when that 15 years is done. It's really the only argument for it, in my opinion.
And the
Madam
con
Chair?
of taking money from the road stabilization in option 2 is that it's great that it'll be funding George Hill Road with part of that, but it's also gonna be taking a hit to the asphalt management plan, which we've built up over the last 9 years. And that hit will go on for 15 years, putting the whole plan that, for almost a decade we've been working towards back versus forward, which option 3 would do.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ray? I can't see.
Yeah, so, option 2 is the best deal here. And what we need to focus on is that 48.26 per year for 15 years, which doesn't sound like a lot of money when you're, when your taxes are anywhere from $5,000 up to, $40,000. It doesn't sound like a lot of money per year. But what we have to deal with here is we've got George Hill, great road, I'm just going to be honest. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and it needs to be done, and we need to present this to the taxpayers to get them to vote for it at town meeting, and then at an election to say, hey, this is worth $48 a year in my taxes. And I think that's the way we go. I think with the grant of $2 million and you drop it down to 33, that's not guaranteed, but it's a possibility. And I think that we focus on the $48 instead of the $76 and move on from there. Now, if we have to add money to the road stabilization system or road stabilization bond in 10 years, then I think we should do that then. I don't think we should try to, filter it in now and just focus on the $48. I think the taxpayers will go along with this. If they've ever driven down George Hill, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible road. And we need, the town needs to make it right and make it better. And I think we focus on that $48 and we move on to town meeting.
So Ray, to that I'll say, yes, George Hill Road absolutely needs to be done. I don't think that's up for debate. We all agree with that. But if we were to do option 2, we won't be going in 10 years to ask to increase the road stabilization. We could be going a lot sooner. So we'll have taken a plan that's working, hurt that plan by taking a large chunk out of it by, I think it's reducing about 33%. If we do this, the plan that we have built for the last decade, and we set that plan back to help this road with no real plan on how to bring it back up 15 years from now. And I don't want to put us in a deficit. I'd rather have us take care of George Hill Road and take care of our asphalt management plan now, rather than let's do this because it sounds good with no plan for later. We'll wait till later's a problem and deal with later. I'd rather deal with it all now.
Well, that's, in some ways, Colleen, I agree with you. But financially, I don't. Because, you're talking $77 compared to 48. And you gotta sell this at town meeting, and you got one shot. You don't have multiple shots at this thing.
Right, but
And
I
I
think
think
if
the
people
board-
are
I
just
think
looking at just the number and not what they're getting for the number, sure, 44 sounds better than 77. But 44 is going to set you back on your asphalt management plan that you put in place almost 10 years ago that's been working and bringing a lot of roads up to par. Those roads will now, that have been waiting to get on the list, they've now been set back and will be set back. And that's going to take who knows how long after 15 years of taking that hit in that plan to get it back to where it is currently today. That could be 25 years from now before we can even get back to what our current status is. Or we can do a plan option 3 where we can take care of George Hill Road, and then we're done in 15 years. We're in a better place than we are today for $75. So I think it's all in how you pitch it. If you pitch 44 is better than 77, sure, you're going to win that all day long. But if you explain what you're getting for 44 and you explain what you're getting for 77, I think most residents are going to guarantee that 77 is a better deal. It puts us in a better position and it gets us our needs met.
And Colleen, I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you. Okay. But at town meeting, you better have something else in your back pocket to bring up, to propose if this thing starts to go downhill. Because remember, if it goes downhill, it's gone. It's gone until the next town meeting. And you don't get a chance to go back. And when you go to the next town meeting, unless you schedule another town meeting in June or July or whatever it is, it's going to be more money. So I think we have to look at this a little realistically as to how people, with the economy the way it is and things the way they are, I think people will pay $50. They may not pay 76. So,
Evan, do you know if there is another George Hill on the way? And when I say that, there was a decision made at a certain point to basically stop investing in George Hill Road, right? It was a conscious decision that we're not going to mill and overlay. We're not going to, do any kind of real pavement management beyond crack seal and, emergency culvert repair and that sort of stuff. Is this something that we should expect in 10 years, another road like this?
So I'm not aware of any road that is anywhere near the point of George Hill Road that needs the same amount of infrastructure put into it. And what I mean by that is not just mill and overlay, but full storm.
A rebuild from ground.
Yeah, I mean, just immense. I will say that as Grafton continues to grow, the amount of stormwater management that we are doing is growing by leaps and bounds. I spent my this morning with zoning and DPW and the water department standing in a swampy area trying to figure out, what's next. So I think that's going to happen more and more and more. And I think those costs are going to be what drives your next George Hill Road. And so I guess my answer to that is I'm not aware of any single road that's going to be like a George Hill Road, but I think you're going to have 30 of them as far as, what do they call it? A death by 1,000 cuts. Culverts, little farm drains, just all these things that as Grafton grows, we're taking on that we never had to take on before.
So, another question along those lines then is, it seems like stormwater management is an area where there are grant funds available.
For now.
For now, yep. Chapter 90 is gonna be, pretty static. It seems like that's been at $500,000 a year forever. That's gonna stay what it is. I'm just trying to play all the numbers out over time.
Yeah.
Cause I'd like to make a bit of a pitch for option 2, I think. We've already increased, if the select board back in 2014, 2015 decided to increase the road stabilization by 2.5%, we'd be at around 2 million a year now instead of the 1.5. So we made a decision as a board last year to try to create a more sustainable budget long-term by increasing our road stabilization and capital stabilization by 2.5%. That added 37.5. It's not the 315, but next year it's going to be an additional 45 and then 60, and that's the way that the additional 2.5% is going to work over time. So while we'll take a short-term hit in terms of pavement management, there's a couple things that I'll say to that. In the early years of the pavement management plan, I think we had a pretty well understood, well established plan and program. I don't know if it's the same now. I don't know if I know we've got a committee and we still make decisions. There is some analysis, but the idea that we're going to fall off the plan, and substantially compromise the roads that have seen a substantial investment and significant improvement over the last couple of overrides. I don't know how much I buy into that. So I'm trying to figure out, I would like the budget to be sustainable. The simplest option is to just do an override, which would be option 3. But you have to combine that with people's appetite for voting for that. I think we've all agreed that this is something that has to be done, and it has to be done as an emergency because the road is in such poor condition. It just needs to be done. So there's that element of you've got to get to this through. You've got to get people to vote for it and get behind it. And so when you combine those things together, I think that there is a really strong case for me to vote for option 2, which is it is going to take a little bit of a short-term hit in terms of pavement all over Grafton, but we'll make that up over time as we increase our road stabilization by 2.5%. And it might take us 10 years to get there, but each year in that 10 years, we're adding incrementally in a way that's more sustainable for the taxpayers. So as I think about options, to me, option 2 and option 3 are really the only 2 options. I lean more towards option 2 than to option 3 for those reasons. And I think it's a way to have more confidence that we're going to be able to actually pave this road. And it's a way for us to do it in a way that will have there's no way that you can take all of the cost of this out of Chapter 90 and stabilization as it is. There's just no way to do that. It's too big a spend to do that.
Yep.
But if we don't have a reasonable anticipation that there's another one of these coming in 10 or 15 years, which I think I heard that you're not aware of any, and I would hope that in that ensuing time frame we wouldn't make a decision that we're going to just stop investing in a road. I think that was a poor decision. But it wasn't mine to make. It was some other board that had a different set of conditions that they were considering. So I don't want to criticize that, but I would expect that we would be, with our additional money, continuing to spend on all the roads in Grafton. And so if we don't see anything like that, and we have some grant opportunities for stormwater management, which, it's going to dry up at some point. I don't know when that's going to be. So there's a little bit of an unknown. I'd be in favor of option 2. So that's my basic thinking around this.
So, question, you mentioned, so this is gonna go to town meeting,
Yes.
but not, something about a ballot or no?
Yes,
Yeah,
because
as
it's
well.
excluded debt, so it has to be on the ballot.
Okay, so that will be,
That'll be at your annual election, which is May.
so that'll be first.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
May
sorry.
15th.
It's town
Correct.
meeting and the following.
But
week.
Yep, yep,
it's chicken or the egg, because in order to get the ballots printed, we have to have them,
Yes.
the ballot questions in by
Okay.
Friday.
Yep, yep. So on option 2,
Yes.
so you came up, I know you have to, just went 50-50, right? In
Yep.
terms of the 315. Is it worth looking at that anymore and bumping down the road stabilization slightly? Maybe not. And bumping up the debt exclusion?
Yes, and, well,
Just in
yes,
terms
but
of
I also, I want to be clear, what we're gonna do is, we're gonna exempt the debt and also go after the grants.
Right.
So that 315 half is not ever going to be the actual number.
Sure.
It's gonna be some variation thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Based upon what we get for grant incentive, what we get for bond rate, what we get for bond proceeds.
Mm-hmm.
All these things are gonna factor into that number. I simply did that because, well, when you're doing public outreach, these are foreign topics to a lot of people. And having it is easy to understand.
Yep.
If 500,000 would be $76, what would say 350,000 be? I'm sorry.
Give me 1 second.
What I'm trying to do is get it closer to that 4450 number. What's that number?
Okay. Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay.
I'll give you a topic.
Would
Or
that,
not,
would that
sorry,
change, if you're leaning towards option 2 versus 3,
Mhm.
but you're gonna end up paying the same amount in your taxes, one that would fall off in 15 years, and one that's going to go on forever, but it's the same dollar amount, how does everybody feel about that?
Yeah, if you can get
That
option
would
3
make
down
sense,
to,
yeah.
A lower amount?
something closer to that $50. Sure.
Okay, so I guess I'd wanna know what that number looks like. And then that would also, with the 2.5%, that would get us in 15 years where we really wanna be.
I hear, from a lot of people that,
Oh, yeah, so while we're, oh, sorry,
Okay.
Marie, go ahead.
That's right. I was gonna say, hear from a lot of people about roads, issues with our roads, and I also hear from a lot of people about taxes, right? So this is a tough one for those reasons.
Yeah.
It's kind of the,
We do have a comment in the audience while we're talking amongst ourselves, if you'd like to.
Greg Marr, 36 Ferry Street. One thing to note with option 3 is that it is a Proposition 2.5 override. We passed a Proposition 2.5 override 3 years ago. We have $130,000 in excess levy capacity left from that override. We think it will get us through FY25. We are not sure. So we're in the position of, we had an override 3 years ago, possibly asking for one this year with almost no notice to the town, and perhaps asking for another one in a year or two from now. Second point is, town meeting is not the first time that you have to inform people of this. This is, if this goes out, this is going on the ballot. We have mail-in early voting. The ballots are going to be in the hands of people before a town meeting. Especially if you approve early voting any earlier than town meeting, people will be seeing this before town meeting. So you need to get your presentation and your rationale and everything out to people before they get their ballots in the mail, and they suddenly see this Proposition 2.5 override on their ballot with no notice. So those are the two things. Is concerned with having 3 overrides in 5 years, and also the timing and lack of notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just wanted a little bit of confusion there. It's not an override. An override goes on forever.
That's
It
option.
never goes away unless it's revoted at town meeting. It's a debt exclusion. It has an end date.
Well,
It's not an override.
option 3 is an override, right?
Oh, no, I know option 3 is an override, but
That's probably what he's referring to.
Sorry, that's what we're
Not what
talking
I'm
about.
referring to.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, David Limmy, George Hill Road. Couple of things I just wanted to mention. From a, I guess, an equity and fairness point of view, generally, people in town might think, well, George Hill Road is a road, and we haven't been repairing it, and we're talking about rebuilding it. So a portion of the road override that I've been paying since 2014 ought to be used for that purpose. Option 2 includes that feature. Option 3 does not. Option 3 slips in a, pardon me, I'm biased here, slips in a forever $500,000 increase on top of whatever the road override amount is on a year-to-year basis. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is that if, and I've read the language that you folks get to consider once a year, if the board votes to increase the road override by the 2.5% that's allowed every year, in 10 years you'll be darn close to adding $500,000 if you do the math. So you're going to get there one way or the other if you follow that approach. Point number 3 is that the aspect of option 2 that tends to be attractive to people is that they're approving a debt exclusion and increasing their taxes, but it goes away. There's something attractive about the notion of a tax increase that goes away, or should I say less onerous. A tax increase that is imposed and never goes away, which is option 3, does not have that attractiveness to it, if you will. You lose a selling point, in other words. And point number 4, I would echo the previous comment, which was there's perilously little time in which to sell anything, so you better pick the thing that's going to be the easiest to sell.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All great points.
Just because it took me this long to do the math, 300,000 is 4571. If you did the forever option.
Okay.
And we're voting on this evening?
Yep.
Yeah, because you have to have it printed by, goes to the printer on Friday.
I move that the board vote to proceed with option 2.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none by roll call.
Often I.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Foley, aye.
Mead eye.
Okay, declare the motion carried.
Great, so one more vote I'd like you to take. I would like to read the ballot question,
Mhm.
and then I would like someone to say so moved, and then vote that language
Yeah,
to send to the town clerk.
Mhm.
So I'd like the board to vote to send the following language for the town clerk, to the town clerk for inclusion on the ballot. It is ballot question, shall the town of Grafton be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2 1/2 so-called, the amounts required to pay for bonds issued in order to pay costs of the George Hill Road resurfacing and drainage improvement project, so-called, which project includes the full reconstruction of the road, its substrate, and all associated stormwater infrastructure, together with full design, engineering, permitting, and construction oversight, and all other costs incidental and related thereto.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those by roll call.
Often I.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Foley, aye.
Mead eye.
Declare the motion carried.
Thank you.
Is there anything else we need to do? For
No, not for this.
I do have one question to Greg's point. So the people that get the ballots before town meeting, how is that going to work?
That is an excellent question. It's Tomorrow Evans' problem.
It's tomorrow. Great.
No, we will do a full court push on that, to make sure that people have that information. I doubt that we will have the funding to do any kind of mailer. But we can push it out there via Code Red, do it, attachments, you know, all everything that we normally do.
I know we've done it in Grafton before. You know, we definitely did that in 2020 where we had town meeting and then a few days later we had the ballot. So it's not unprecedented. I just can't remember how we did it.
This is why a lot of municipalities in Massachusetts have their election in June, so that you can have your May Springtown meeting, and then move stuff onto the ballot if you need to. I am not suggesting we change that. I'm not gonna be the poster boy for that. Though, thank you for this vote. I think that, you know, we're making great progress in actually getting this project over the line here to get started. Feels like a lot of work to get started on a project, but we're getting there. So, thank you.
We have one more comment. It looks like. Are there any hands on Zoom either?
There was not.
Okay.
I was just wondering if it would be possible to have the town clerk include a one-page flyer with any ballot that is sent out.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't want to say that and make it a thing if it's not possible.
Right. So investigate the possibility.
So Greg got up and suggested, which is great, Greg. I appreciate that. No, I was thinking the same thing. That would be a great way to do that.
Yeah. And the other point I forgot to make is if we do another override, you could add more money to road stabilization at that point. So.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Up next is update on 17 and 27 Upton Street purchase and sales agreement. So I know that was sent out to us today.
And it is in the amended packet as well.
Fantastic.
It is a short addendum to the original agreement, and so these are the major changes. The initial $25,000 deposit that they gave us that's been held in escrow becomes hard money, meaning it's not refundable should this project not go forward. The town of Grafton always keeps that $25,000. They would then owe us an additional $50,000 deposit, which is new, and stays refundable if that project does not move forward. It also gives them an entitlement period extension to April 1st, 2025. This gives time to obtain permits and approvals. There's a lot of other legalese in there. These are the three salient points, to be honest with you. We've had a lot of back and forth. I know there are board members that feel that there should be a shorter time frame, a faster look backs. I'm sure that we could ask for updates every 6 months in the form of some reporting. I don't think that's an issue. Where any developer is going to balk is having to ask the town to re-sign an agreement every, say, 6 months. They don't want to invest money, nor do their investors. We've talked a little bit to the chair. I've talked to the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, and not speaking on behalf of the entire trust. They have a lot of time. Oh, Bruce is here. Sorry, Bruce. I didn't see you back there.
That's all right.
Do you want to come up?
Not really.
Okay. So I talked to Bruce, who isn't here, and we both feel that the amount of time that the trust has invested into this project and the amount of how close we are to getting this again across the finish line, it probably makes the most sense for the board to agree to this PNS extension and give the developer ample time to get their permits, get their approvals, fix their financing issues. We did have a meeting with the owner of GSX, John Grant, and he did, own all of the delay issues. It's mostly due to financing and what we saw happen in the financial markets and interest rates and all the rest of it. He believes that he's at a point where money is now much more liquid and able to get these projects moving. So his request was to ask the board to extend the PNS and move forward. Last thing I'll say is that we do have the option to say we're not going to do this and go back out to RFP. That's gonna add a substantial amount of time. There is costs associated with that. And we do have, and this is not a pitch in any way, we do have about $10,000 of environmental testing that needs to be done, that if the town isn't in the PNS, we have to pay instead of them paying. That's not make or break. It's just something I thought you should know.
50,000 comes over at the extension.
Yes, correct. And that'll be held in escrow. Again, if the town did not renew after the entitlement period, or the project doesn't go forward, that money is refundable, but the original 25,000 is not.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ray.
I'm going to shock everybody. I'm not a fan of this at all. This project at all. You know, 25 grand to go hard. Oh, wow. That's wonderful. You know, that's great. 50,000 non-refundable. Oh, this is wonderful. Oh, by the way, 2 years to get their approvals, and then the buyer has an option, has the right to extend that for another year. This could go till 2027 and never happen. Never happen. This is the same company that came into us and pitched 8 Pine Street in this wonderful project and everything. And I understand that, you know, I understand the buying, the borrowing market. I understand. Oh, trust me, I understand it all. But they put that piece of property on up for sale. Never paid for the building permit, which took us out of safe harbor. Now, I talked to Evan about this, and he said that they had committed to 60 to 120 days to pay for the building permit at 8 Pine Street. And I know I'm moving on to Pine Street besides Upton Road. But it's the same company. They put $25,000 down on this entire project that's going to go hard if they walk away anytime within a 3-year period. And I know Evan doesn't want, you know, or no developer wants a 6-month review and where are you? And by the way, we can't go any further. But I think the board, if we do go along with this, should at least put a stipulation in this that every year they have to prove to us that they're actually doing something. Because this doesn't tell us anything. They have 3 years to get this project done, and they got 25 grand on the line. That's it, 25 grand. We're out of safe harbor. Why? Because of them. If they came to us and said, hey, we'll pay for the building permit over at 8 Pine Street, and this is the deal that we want, I still wouldn't like the 3-year period, and I still wouldn't like the review, that there's no review period. But I would be more apt to go along with it if they came through and gave us what they were supposed to give us. I'll be quiet.
I have a question. Can we incentivize this project through the Affordable Housing Trust grant? By that I mean if they don't hit a certain deadline, that the 1.9 or whatever it is turns into 1.8, and then another deadline, then it turns into 1.7, something like that.
So I would say you cannot, no.
Not us, but is that something that?
I can't speak for the trust.
Yeah, someone might be able to speak for the trust if they finally showed up to the meeting.
But I don't know that even if he did show up to the meeting, he'd be able to speak on behalf of the trust.
Not on behalf of
They
the,
haven't
but as an
discussed
idea
yet.
to have the trust consider. Is that something that you think would work in a work with a developer? If, let's say, the housing trust said, yeah, that's great, let's do that. Is that?
If you're asking my opinion, I'd say no.
Okay.
I'd say let the trust do what the trust is going to do. And this board should decide whether it wants to move forward or go out to RFP.
I see.
I want to point out that you go back out to RFP, maybe you get a great developer.
Maybe get GSX again.
Or maybe you get nobody. This is the only bidder that came to the table.
Yep.
They've spent $350,000 on environmentals on site currently. And you know, I take Ray's point that the reason that we're not in safe harbor is because they didn't pay for their building permit. That's accurate. I do want to point out the only reason we were in safe harbor to begin with was because they came with their 8 Pine Street project, right? And they were the ones that pushed us over that line. I don't have a crystal ball. Does this project go? Does it not go? I don't know. I think that from my perspective, this is what we have on the table. Everything else is speculative. I tried really hard to get them to give us like 500,000 yards of gravel to sweeten this deal, and Ray, I just couldn't get it done.
The joke's getting old, but that's
not
okay.
to me. I love it. I'm looking at getting merch made. So, anyways, no, but that's my opinion. If the board wants to go in a different direction, we'll certainly execute that.
I understand Ray's point, but I personally am not up for going back out to RFP because all that could really do is just add to the timeline and put us right back to where we are with the same developer.
I understand his point that specifically, we can point to 8 Pine with our current safe harbor issue, but couldn't we say similar about, any of the lips that have been before the board in the past year, that if any of those had moved faster, we wouldn't necessarily find ourselves in this position too. And I think this one might draw a little more ire because they moved first, whereas some of the other ones I think held to see what those funding options were going to be. So we're getting a later start in exchange, and better off. But I am bird in the hand on this one, and would prefer to move forward with the current offer that we have.
So, my thinking on this one is if we fast forward 15 years from now, there's going to be a development there, whether it's GSX or some other developer. I'm not in any particular hurry to get something developed there. There's not a lot of benefit to the town. Our planning department is already somewhat overburdened with a lot of development happening in town, a lot of going on. But so, while I'm not in a hurry, I also think we don't need to kick GSX out necessarily. And if they need to take 2 or 3 years to figure out with a development that they've already invested in, what it's going to take to get it across the line, I'm inclined to give them the opportunity to do that, understanding that if we were to go out to RFP, we're still talking a few years before something shows up there. But in the end, Grafton has said that we want a zone, a gateway zone in that area where there is a development. Grafton voted that at town meeting and said, we want some density. We want it near the common, near the library, near One Grafton Common, near all that infrastructure and whatnot. So it's going to be there. I'm very confident that will work itself out. So I'm not in a hurry to kick out GSX. If it takes 3 years and then they walk, so be it. I'm actually not bothered by that. And then we would go to RFP at that point, get another developer. Everything will have changed in the world between now and 3 years. And it'll be a completely different set of circumstances that the developers will be dealing with. So I'm kind of with Andy on this one, just a bird in the hand approach. I'd be in favor of giving them an opportunity. I don't love the length of this. I wish it was shorter, but
I would be in favor of the check-ins as discussed. 6 months probably doesn't make sense because of the somewhat glacial pace of how these projects go. But I think, learning from past mistakes, at least a report of some sort is a good practice if we can.
I think we need to be continuing to foster relationships with the development community. We had some really productive discussions with Eastland, for example, Vinicasa. We're starting to develop some more rapport with some of these developers, and I think this is a way for us to continue to do that. So I'd agree with that. I wish this agreement was a year shorter, but it is what it is. And, you know, what, I'm not in a huge hurry, to get this done, so. Cause there, you know, once it's done, there's nothing magic happens in Grafton, right? This isn't a massive public benefit other, you know, it's gonna help people moving into Grafton for sure, but, you know, if that happens in 3 years or 5 years, it's gonna happen.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So, you know, Matt and Andy, I understand what you're talking about, okay? But here's my concern, is that we have an agreement here it's a 3-year agreement, okay? It's extended by their choice, not by ours. It's 25 grand. If they go and get all the approvals and everything else again, and they do that all over again, and it takes them 2 years or 2.5 years or 1.5 years, that's great. They will come in and ask for a reduced fee for the building permit, just like they did on Pine Street, and they will put it up for sale, just like Pine Street. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but then that piece of property sits there for 3 or 4 more years, and it's got the approvals, and they go back to the planning board, and they get their approvals updated and everything. I've seen this in other towns, and I'm just not in favor of it at all. I think that at the minimum, that they should get a year with extensions approved by the town of Grafton. So that in 1 year, if they don't do anything, and they haven't moved anywhere, that we get an option, instead of waiting 3 years to go back out to RFP, that we have the option, we have the control of what's going to happen at that piece of property. And I think that we should include that.
With another year. So just to clarify, it's the initial term of this renewal is up to April 1st, 2025.
Right.
And then they have an option without any input from Grafton of renewing that for an additional year.
Correct.
Yeah. I would like this a lot more if it was 2 years and not 3 years, but I don't know. Are other board members amenable to that? And is there a possibility that GSX would just take that? Because what's their other option, right?
Yeah, I can go back to them with that.
It would work better for me,
That's much more palatable
Yeah.
to me.
given that we're already a year in.
So 20, so do 2 years with a,
Exactly the same thing.
Yep.
Instead of 2025, 2024. We give them a full year, and then they give an option to renew for a year. That gives them two full years.
who authorizes the second year?
The option would be the authorization of the town of Grafton and the developer. The agreement of the town of Grafton and the developer.
I would propose that they
What
get
does it say
the option
now?
to renew.
What's the extra year now?
They get to choose the extra year. If it's their discretion. You could take that part off the table, but you need to have that 2 year window.
All I'm saying is just shorten it a year.
So you'd get rid of that 1 year extension.
However you think it would fly.
I would say, no, I'd change I'd leave the 1 year extension in there, but have them need to, in a year, renew it at their option. So we give them 2 years, but that would be the checkpoint where they would just have to pay an additional amount of money, give them a little bit more skin in the game, and actually, come to the town and say, we're moving forward with this, we're gonna do it within a year.
I can go back to them with that.
So the entitlement period is 1 year, and then the buyer shall have the option. For
That's
for
what I'm
the next year.
suggesting.
Yeah.
Okay, do you need a motion to that effect?
Yes, because I need you to be authorized to sign it if they agree to those terms.
Okay.
Okay, how about, I move the board vote to authorize the chair to sign the first.
Andy?
Sorry.
Bruce has been itchy here.
Oh,
Coming up?
do you want to speak?
Yeah, I just got here.
Oh, okay. Welcome. I'm so glad we never offered you an option to speak earlier
No,
because you
that's
weren't here.
quite all right. Hi, Bruce Spinney, 71 Potter Hill Road. I didn't want to speak before because Evan could probably go over everything that I need to say in like a 5-minute window as opposed to a 31.
You got 5 minutes.
Fair enough. From a trust perspective in the grant, we got to the grant to the point where, everything was in that review phase. We were to the point where it could be a vote, and then we ran into this struggle. Part of the rationale for the timeline, not the whole timeline to the extent that it's before you now, was made them aware that there is a high volume of traffic coming into town as far as development is concerned. We do have a brand new town planner, and there's staff support there, but it's it is what it is. If you have a bunch of projects coming in, there's talk about master plans, there's housing production plans, there's a good amount of work that's going to be done in there. So if it were to take 9 to 12 months just to get into the permit process, I would not be surprised at all. Your average time for a normal 40B going through the ZBA process is going to be in that 9-month window. Never mind the 3 months leading up to it, the 3 months in the tail ends, and the appeal time as well. So if you're messing with the dates, I think it'd be in the best interest of everybody, including the trust, who is going to pick this back up if they decide to get an extension and work some agreement out, because we're participating in that front portion, the soft money, the really expensive stuff in the beginning, and we need to make sure from the trust perspective that we're not fighting with a completely different board over money that we've spent. So the 2 years I think is reasonable. What you do with the extension piece and stuff like that, I think that's fine. But they need a good solid window of 2 years where they don't have to look over their shoulders with somebody saying, well, you didn't get there in 18 months or a year, but now you got to work with us again to, kind of take a second bite of the apple. I think the project is by and large resetting. And from a town's perspective, in what the current zoning there is, what we're getting out of it, and the big selling point for the trust, is this group is committed to going to that 25% mark, which has definitely led to problems in their financial models and seeking investment, because we only require them to be at 10%, which means absolutely nothing as far as an impact on us for Safe Harbor, for the half a dozen LIP programs that are going to be in the works over the next year, and as you've all seen. So it's more valuable to the trust, but having said that, the trust is going to pick this back up after you guys decide what to do with it. But just remember that piece of it. They've already agreed to the 25%, which is something that you may or may not get, and I highly doubt somebody's going to come to the table in an RFP process should you go back out and require the 25%, especially when the zoning doesn't say that. So it's a very difficult argument to have. 5 minutes.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So after hearing all that timeline play out, if let's say we go back to them and say you need to come back in a year, what is the benefit other than just forcing them back at the table when it really does sound like 2 years at minimum before they're going to have anything substantial? So would it be, could we keep the 2 years and then remove the option to renew to keep the pressure on?
You could do, in my opinion, I would think you could do 2 years, and then option 3 is a mutual decision.
Okay, I like
Instead
that.
of putting it just on them or just on us.
Yep.
So leave the agreement as is, the renewal to go from years 2 and 3, that's a mutual decision. I'd be happy with that.
So either one of us can choose at that point to walk away.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just wondering how you pay for that.
Come on, Bruce.
Ray, how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm big on holding people's feet to the fire. I get concerned that we could go 2 years and nothing happens. I get concerned we could go a year and a half, nothing happens. And then, we're all sitting here going, well, it was a nice project, but It's not gonna happen. I would rather see a review, a joint meeting with the developer and the board at a year so that we are informed of what is going on, where they are, what the progress is, and how they're getting to the end result. And what is that end result? Is it 2 years, or are we gonna be looking at an option to go to 3 years?
But Ray, I think they would do that. We don't need to write that into the agreement. If we ask them to come in next year, they'll come in.
Matt, this is the same company that in October, their purchase and sale agreement expired. And they never contacted us.
Yep.
This is the same company. These are not new people. Their purchase and sale expired. At that point, we could have just said, see you later. We had to give them their 25 grand back, and then we walk away and we go to an RFP. It's now April, and they are here saying, okay, we want to start over. I don't, without having, you don't need my vote, but without having some type of review after 12 months, I am not in favor of this project at all.
Okay, but my point is, I think they would come in.
Yeah.
So I guess to that point with the review, if we write in that we have a 12-month review, what's actionable out of that if they come in and they have no additional information?
If they haven't done anything within 12 months, we both walk away. We take the 25 grand, we walk away. Because within 12 months, if they're going to actually do something, they will have had a lot of work done.
But they're not going to agree to that in the contract.
Then you got to do business the way you got to do business.
I think we go back to what we originally said, that it's the 1 year entitlement period. The buyer shall also have the right to extend the entitlement period for 1 additional year. I mean, my concern with this, the additional, the 3 years is they are plus 6 months right now from we're a year and a half into it, eh? It's not just a year and a few months, so there's got to be some movement.
I just also, I think we keep missing the point that work was done over the first year. We did or we didn't do anything.
The 350,000, yeah.
They did all the environmentals.
Yep.
Right, so it's not like it's just sat there fallow and
A lot of work with the Affordable Housing Trust to get to an agreement.
Right.
That's, so it's not like they've done nothing.
It's probably
and
not.
It's not like it's starting from zero. It's going to be starting from where it was left, and it's left it, with some work done. So
right.
I'm personally okay with 2, as long as the mutual option for 3.
Same.
Okay. So, unless anybody has any other discussions, comments, are there any hands raised? Anybody else?
There
Not
are
in the
no
room?
hands on Zoom.
Great. So if not, I can take a motion to that effect.
So would we do this with amendments, or are we? Does it have to be looser than that in the description? With authorize the chair to make amendments?
No, I would say move to vote to authorize the chair to sign the First Amendment purchase and sale as amended by the board between the town of Grafton and GSX Ventures LLC as written.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those by roll call.
Boston, aye?
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Foley, nay.
Nay.
Okay, declare the motion carried. Up next is Westboro Road Water Main Project, recommendation to award.
Yeah, so we did a full bid process on this. I say we, William did most of it, along with VHB, which is our consultant. If you remember, this is our ARPA project in conjunction with the Grafton Water District and Tufts. Low bidder came in at $691,000. Our original budget for the project was $830,000, so that's a good price for us. VHB recommends that the board award the Westboro Road Water Main Project to Halleck Water Contracting, Inc.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
I had been a little surprised, at the discrepancy between what we had predicted and what the low bid came in at, but, the paper seems to, all the research and everything seems to speak highly of the contractor and, faith in their ability to complete this at that budget, so, great.
Wonderful. Oh, if that's it, I can take a motion.
I move the board vote to award the Westboro Road Water Main Project contract to Halush Water Contracting, Inc.
Second.
Halleck, I think.
Halleck.
Second.
Sorry.
Motion made and
It's okay.
seconded.
Happens to all of us.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Reed, aye.
Declare the motion carried. Up next is layout plan discussion for Joncas Terrace.
Yeah, so this is me too. If you recall, we had a citizen's petition for taking Joncas Terrace as a public way. I've been working with council as well as the proponents of that citizen's petition, and where we are now is the residents have withdrawn their citizen's petition, and and let me tell you the reason why. The reason why is because we don't have a layout for the road, and so you really can't go to town meeting and say, accept this as a public way, and oh, by the way, we don't really know where it is. Not good government to do it that way. So we have identified the deed that holds that property. We are asking the select board to vote to refer this to the DPW superintendent, or DPW director, excuse me, to order a layout plan and have him create the layout and meets and bounds. And then we can come back to the table again once we have that layout and know if there's any issues in it and have resolved them before the town takes it as a liability. So I did speak to the petitioners at length, and they understood, and they're very happy that we're taking steps instead of just saying that we will. So they were agreeable to removing it from the town meeting warrant.
Nice.
I think, so the bylaw, Article 19, doesn't say whether you need to vote or not, but I would just ask that you vote to refer this issue to the DPW director for layout.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Reed, aye.
Declare the
Thank
motion
you.
carried. Thank you, DPW director.
Making some progress.
Scheduled town meeting logistics with the town moderator and finance committee.
So we met with the town moderator. The preferred date to do this would be the evening of Wednesday, the 26th at 7 p.m. It would be fully remote.
Love that.
Any issues from the board end?
In the finance committee, or is this just coming to us and going to the town, or finance committee after? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Does that work with everybody else? We'll have a good logistics meeting.
Yeah. They're helpful. We didn't have one last time, and
Yeah.
it was evident that we should continue to do that.
Yeah.
So lesson learned.
Okay. So you will reach out to the finance committee and the moderator and make sure everybody's all on the same page and get that set up on Zoom?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, select board reports. So this weekend, a lot of us met with the Hassanamisic Council, which I thought was extremely helpful, and I'm excited to see the relationship build from there. And there was a lot of positive discussion and a lot of good takeaways that I felt, and I know we all attended, so I don't know if you guys all want to speak to that or not. Okay, well, I look forward to our next meeting with them and the good things to come. Are there any other select board reports?
Yeah, no, that was a powerful meeting. I think we had. I was really proud of that. That we were able to attend, and I felt like just to echo that we had some really great discussion, and really looking forward to positive collaboration. it's definitely a worthwhile cause, and I think something that's fallen by the wayside similarly. So it's really great.
Did has anyone covered Westcom in that visit?
No, no.
All right, well, I'll cover
You're
it. Evan set up a discussion out at Westcom, which is the emergency call center out in Chicopee, is it?
Yep.
Yep. So we got an opportunity to meet with their executive director, as well as the chief of police from Munson, and we spent the better part of a day out there. My personal interest was, a lot of people had concerns about the dark station idea, the implementation of it and whatnot. So I'm really glad that we went. We were welcomed with open arms out there, and I think we had some very candid conversations about how things went. The chief didn't try to oversell it or even really sell it in one way or another. Just said, here's been our experience, and there was a lot of lessons learned, I think, that they had from that. So for me, the two things that kind of I learned, I guess, that day, one is just the complexity of all the systems integration. So the more towns you have involved at the start, the more complex the go live is, because you have all these phone systems to integrate, you have all of these different software packages to integrate with your dispatch and vehicle tracking and radios and all that kind of stuff. And the other one was just in actually visiting the dark station, I feel a lot more comfortable with it than I did in theory before seeing it. You rock up to the lobby, you pick the phone up, and you don't have to do anything. You just pick the phone up and it's dialing the dispatch. So you're basically on the phone with them within seconds. Maybe quicker than in Grafton today if our single dispatch person is doing anything else. So because you've got multiple dispatchers on the other end of this emergency call center, to pick up the phone, they're looking at you on the video, you get an instant response. If it's some type of significant emergency, you have somebody who's talking to you at the same time that somebody else is dispatching an ambulance or an EMS or whatever is needed for that, an officer. A lot of the sort of filling out of forms and submittal of forms, a lot of that moves online. That's what I heard in terms of customer service was probably the biggest adjustment for residents, is that they need to learn to do a little bit more online and do a little bit more. You can rock up and get a lot of the forms there and just put them in the Dropbox, but don't expect a person there to receive the form from you. You might have to do it online or just drop it in the box, which I feel pretty comfortable with that. In just looking at the their implementation didn't have a kind of a man trap as it is, but they're working on building that, which means if you rock up and talk to dispatch and say, somebody's following me, can you lock me in, basically, they're building in that capability. They don't have that today, but again, that's something that Grafton has the option, and maybe that was the last thing that I learned is Grafton has any option that we want for any of these things. It's just we've got to decide how much we want to spend and how we want to phase that spending. So we've got to make those decisions as far as how to ramp up the service levels based on spend and also how many towns would come in and all that kind of stuff. It's totally up to the discretion of the towns and that executive board to make a decision. So I found it extremely valuable, and thanks so much for setting that up, Evan.
Thank you.
I thought it was a really valuable day for all of us.
Agreed.
I'm going to do my thing and throw, I feel, a well-deserved attaboy over to our town administrator, because I felt like a lot of the other takeaways for me during that visit, we got, in talking with the chief and people at the rec, they were very candid in things that came up during the first year that they wouldn't have necessarily expected, unforeseen obstacles, things like that. And as great as Evan has been throughout this process of keeping us updated and explaining why he's structured things the way that he has tried, hearing from those other people that this would be a good idea to do, and then knowing that that's already been covered, to the degree that it can be, was great. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other select board reports?
Yeah, I can.
Keep going.
I can keep talking. Were you gonna talk about the library at all in your ATA report?
I don't think we had an ATA report.
No, we're gonna let him to talk tonight.
So we held a library building and planning committee meeting at the beginning of the week. The ADA work on all the shelf heights and everything has been taken care of. We are basically down to finalizing the HVAC issues and a little bit of back and forth with that. But the committee itself will likely not meet again until we have authorization to release that last payment to CTA, the contractor. I don't know that it's been scheduled, but they will be doing the final occupancy inspection very soon. So all good news on that front.
Andy, did you just bring up the final certificate of occupancy?
Yes.
We got that.
Hey, there we go.
Yep, so that's already been submitted to the state for our 4th payment.
Right, because we needed that before the 16th.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, so we got that. We got that in. State's happy with it. We're happy with it.
So there we go.
Fantastic. Anything else? The senior center held a nice birthday party that we attended, which was lovely as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Town administrator report.
Do you even want to do this?
No, I don't. Right. So obviously we're finalizing all our last minute budget discussions. We really haven't touched the budget in a few weeks. We're feeling pretty comfortable with where we are. Just hopeful that the House revenue numbers, as Senator Moore talked about earlier, come in a little rosier for us than the governor's numbers. I don't really bring this up very often, but I do continually every week. I meet with half the department heads, and then the following week I meet with the other half of the department heads. And so just want to thank all of our department heads. You have a great staff here, and they're doing some really good work. I was just on site, as I mentioned earlier, today with Paul Canoyer and Bob Berger dealing with an issue, and those people fight for the residents of Grafton. I know it doesn't always come across that way, but I was impressed watching both of them and advocating for residents that otherwise wouldn't really have a voice. So everybody's working really hard. We already talked about meeting with the moderator, but we went through the warrant. We do have the warrant floated out there. We're pretty close to being done with it. We're just making final revisions in advance of the 18th. We do have a lot more proofreaders this year, which is going really well. We're getting a lot of feedback and making some tweaks on that, so we're happy with that. As you mentioned, we toured Munson PD and Westcom. I just want to publicly thank Chief Kozlowski and Aaron Hastings, the director of Westcom. The reason I wanted you folks to meet them was because, interestingly enough, they're out of your political sphere, so they don't really care what you do. So they'll just give you the good and the bad, and it is what it is. There's no incentive for them to do it any other way. So
they invited us to join their rec if we were so inclined.
They did. So I thank both of them. They were very good hosts. I should have scheduled more time for Chief Kozlowski. I forgot how much the chief talks. But no, that was awesome. I had a great day. We also attended the Council on Aging celebration for Lucille turning 100. Thought that was really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Such a great turnout from our local officials all the way up through Jim McGovern, and at the same time they were having their duck hunt, which is like an Easter egg hunt but with rubber ducks, and it was awesome just seeing so many people in there having a great time, getting exercise, you know, having that social contact. It just, senior center, they're just doing some really great stuff, and I'm so happy to see that going on. It's really inspirational. And that's pretty much all I have.
Can I throw something out there?
Ugh. Yeah.
So
Is it about me?
It is not about you.
Well then, no.
The composting program is going well. We're approaching 100 households signing up. I'm confident that we'll crest that number before this Saturday.
143.
Okay.
Total in the program.
Yeah.
Right?
So new signups are currently at
Oh, yeah,
97. And I think we'll crest the 100 number, and DPW have graciously agreed to help us out with the disbursement on Saturday. So I think that is going to be a great start to the program.
The disbursement for the Rain Barrel program is also on Saturday. So should be busy up at DPW.
Barrels
with
of fun.
our
help over there with those?
What's that?
They need help with those, with any of those volunteers?
I've got a meeting coming up with Kevin to discuss that. I will let you know.
Yeah, thank you. So, good stuff happening, I think.
All right. Correspondence. Is there any correspondence anybody would like to discuss? Okay, moving right along to resignations.
I move that the board vote to acknowledge and accept the resignations of Cynthia Hawks, Claude Hawks, Dominic Marziotti, and Evelyn Gouillet as election workers for the town of Grafton.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Mead eye.
Declare the motion carried. Up next is public comment. Anybody on Zoom?
Nope.
Great. We have more than a
Several.
couple set of meeting minutes.
Indeed. I move the board vote to approve the meeting minutes as written for the January 10, March 21, March 23, March 28, and 2 sets of minutes for March 29th for the 11:45 a.m. and 7 p.m. meetings.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Mead eye.
Declare the motion carried. We do not have a reason to go into executive session tonight, so I can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Mead eye.
All right. Good night, everybody.